Welcome everyone, I'm Jared Hoyer. My New Year's resolution was to perform one random act of kindness every day for an entire year in order to help combat this pattern of violence and harassment and negativity that we are seeing every day when we turn on the news. Now, as promised, this video today will recap all of my acts of kindness from this past week, while also taking some time to highlight a few national acts of kindness that made headlines recently. Finally, at the end of this video, I'll offer some fun and creative ideas for acts of kindness for you to perform this coming week. So, let's get started. My week of kindness started on Monday evening. I went to join some friends for some sand volleyball. Now, it had rained earlier that day, so by the time we wrapped up our games, our feet were pretty covered in sand. We all waited in line at a local water fountain to rinse our feet, and just before I was about to start rinsing my own, the guy in front of me realized he had missed a spot on himself and needed to re-rinse. Now, rather than continue to wash my own and make him go all the way to the back of the line, I stopped and let him jump back in quickly so he could finish rinsing his own feet. Moving on to Tuesday, I went and left some cards on some coworkers' desks. Now, I got these cards from the One a Week nonprofit organization as a gift, and I decided to use them to help spread some kindness. So at about 4:30 in the afternoon on Tuesday, when most of my floor had gone home for the day, I walked around to 6 empty cubes and put a card on each desk. In these cards, I'd put two things. One was the infamous meme of the Hump Day Camel, along with the second thing, which was an inspirational quote. Now, I had never worked with these 6 coworkers whose desks I picked before. I'd never even talked to them, but the hope was that they would wake up on Wednesday, probably like most of us do, wanting the week to be over already and dreading the fact that it's only halfway done, come into work, see the card on their desk, open it up, and hopefully smile. Now, I don't know if this worked or not, but I like to think that maybe I might have made one person smile that day. Moving on to Wednesday, my roommate and I got invited to go to a Minnesota Twins baseball game with a couple of our friends. Now, my roommate and I got there a little later than planned, so our friends had already bought us tickets, allowing us to walk straight in. This was very nice of them, but then they never talked about us paying them back, which I thought was weird. So to help make up for this, I went and bought these friends their first round of drinks at the game. Thankfully, I did this early on in the game because later that evening, I ended up being detained by intergalactic law enforcement. Take a look here. It was quite the scene. Yeah, it really got out of hand really fast. I'll be honest, here's what happened. You know, I'm always very respectful to law enforcement officers. I am. But I'd had a couple of those straw burritos, right? And I was feeling pretty good. So I decided to go up to one of them and try the famous, "Aren't you a little short to be a stormtrooper" joke. Was not very well received. It did not go very well, as you can see. Set it to 1, 3 were on me in the next 5 seconds. I was detained, taken to a tiny little jail cell, held there for a couple innings, and later released on a bond of 500 Imperial credits. So, quite an evening on Wednesday. Now, moving on to Thursday, this is when my roommate and I have a softball game and we will usually carpool together. Now, he usually drives. Like, all the time. I think I've only ever driven once before, which always kind of bothers me every week. I always offer, but he always says we can take his car. This week, I insisted that we take mine, because we should really share that burden since we're going to the same game every week. Later on that same night, after our game was over, the team went out for pizza, per usual, and I ended up buying one of my friends dinner that evening. Now, he knew what I was doing. He knew exactly what I was doing. He knows I do these acts of kindness, and he did start to protest, which I found interesting. But in the end, it's pretty hard to argue with free pizza. My acts for Friday and Saturday both occurred during different trips to the same grocery store. Friday evening was a very hot one here in Minnesota, and when I parked my car, I saw a woman a few stalls down loading her groceries into her car. I took the time to help her load her car, and then took her cart off her hands and returned it to the cart corral for her so that she could spend as little time as possible in the heat and more time in her air-conditioned car. Saturday, I went back for a few items I had missed the night before and ended up in a very, very long line for the self-checkouts. The gentleman in front of me stepped out of line for a moment to get one item he had apparently forgotten, and I saw him start to wander back to the very end of the line. I flagged him down and told him he could return to his spot in front of me, especially because he had 5 items and I had about 20, so I didn't want to make him wait for all that. Finally, my week of kindness came to a close this morning during a trip to Best Buy, where I went to get one little component I needed to help produce this video for today. I was helped by a very, very friendly associate named Igor, who had a great conversation with me, listened to my problem, and was sure to walk me directly to the cheapest solution that I needed. This service was very much appreciated, and on the way out, I made sure to stop at the customer service desk and report that gratitude to upper management so that he could be recognized for his service. So there you have it. Those are my act of kindness stories from this past week. I'm very much looking forward to the potential acts of kindness that may come from this week, and I have a couple of ideas, but first I want to take a moment to highlight some act of kindness stories that made national headlines recently. I don't know if you've seen these all or not, but if you haven't, I'll leave the links to the articles in the description of this video. The first story comes out of Kingsland, Georgia, where earlier this month a police officer was in the middle of directing traffic when he stopped because he saw a young man walking to graduation with a crooked necktie. Now the officer stopped what he was doing so he could go over and help this young man properly tie his necktie, and then proceeded to send him off to graduation and go right back to directing traffic like it was no big deal at all. Now this is a very cool story, and I think we can all safely assume that this was a big deal, in fact, to that young man, and I'm sure he will go on to remember this graduation for the rest of his life. So a very cool story there. Our second story comes not too far away from here in Orono, Minnesota, where earlier this month, two police officers, Matt Sotala and Jay McCoy, and I hope I'm pronouncing those names correctly, were conducting a welfare check on an elderly woman when they happened to notice that she was a little behind in her lawn maintenance. Now, when asked about this, the woman simply said that she didn't have anyone to help her mow her lawn or to help with any of those sort of outdoor projects. Well, that was all it took for Officer Sotala to take up her lawnmower and lend a hand. These officers went above and beyond the call of duty, and I would invite you all to just remember this story in the future, especially if you might have someone in your neighborhood who has similar issues and maybe can't, mow their lawn or shovel their snow or anything like that. Finally, last month, a young woman named Ashley Jost, and again, I hope I'm pronouncing that name correctly, was shopping at a Target in Columbia, Missouri, when she ended up buying a book that would go on to spark a chain of kindness. Tucked away in this book, Ashley found a $5 bill along with a handwritten note that said, "I was having a bad day today. I thought I could maybe make someone's better with this little surprise. Go buy a coffee, a donut, or a face mask. Practice some self-care today. Remember that you are loved, you are amazing, you are strong. Love, Lisa." Now, Ashley was very inspired by this and has even been inspired to do one good deed of her own every week. She also tweeted a picture of this note along with the story, only to see that shared by many of her friends and picked up by her local newspaper. It even caught the attention of the book's author, Rachel Hollis, who encouraged the continuation of this Pay It Forward campaign. Right now, Ashley's tweet has more than 3,000 likes and has been shared around the world. People everywhere are continuing this legacy started by the mysterious Lisa and embraced by Ashley. Now, this is a perfect example of an idea I'm constantly preaching, and that's the idea that you don't have to perform giant acts to change the world. Obviously, if you can, I would encourage you to do so, but this shows that just one super small act can ripple over and over again until the point where it has become giant in nature. I believe in the end, all the acts of kindness performed are more significant than we even realize, but they need to start somewhere. Now, whether or not you had seen any of those stories before this video, I think we can all agree that they're very cool and very inspiring stories. I know they're a little old, but unfortunately, stories of kindness don't make it into the news as often as they should. That's something I'm trying to change here with this campaign. So with that in mind, if you come across any stories like this, whether they make national headlines or if they happen in your small little town, I would love to have you send them to me at jaredhoyer@gmail.com, and I would be sure to share them in my videos. Finally, before we wrap up here, I want to point out some opportunities for some creative random acts of kindness for this coming week. The week begins tomorrow, July 1st, which is National Postal Worker Day. This could be an opportunity to thank your local postal worker, either in person or with a nice note tucked in your mailbox, for all the hard work that they put in. The week will end on July 7th, which is National Father-Daughter Take a Walk Day. Why not embrace this? This sounds like a fantastic way to end the week in my book. Or if you don't live close enough to your father or daughter, give them a call, check in, tell them you're thinking of them. Finally, this week is the week of Independence Day here in the United States. There will be plenty of festivals and celebrations going on all around, and I'd encourage everyone to go out and have a great time. But I'd also ask that you try to make sure everyone around you has a great time as well. Buy someone a beer. Let someone ahead of you in line for the bathroom. Start a conversation with a stranger while you're waiting for fireworks to start. Share your gratitude for the freedom we are celebrating. And most importantly, if you see any veteran or current members of the armed forces this week, be sure to thank them for allowing that freedom to continue to thrive almost 250 years later. That's all I have for you this week. You can find the links to the articles I talked about in the description of this video. Be sure to follow me on Instagram and Facebook, and send me your stories of random acts of kindness so that I can share them with everyone else. I'll see you next week. Until then, I'm Jared Hoyer, reminding you to pay it forward.